Second, finding common ground conversation. Our topic tonight will be knowing your rights during police interactions. People have experienced many types of interactions with officers, and they've been left with questions, some questions and concerns, just various feelings. And, it's really important to have the opportunity and to take the opportunity tonight, as, we have the department available to have a quality exchange, to get those questions out there and those comments. It's really important to have this as a safe space, a good space to provide a platform for an exchange. We do encourage just a relaxed conversation. And so we have Melonie Welchans, who will moderate for us tonight, and she'll just go through a few of our rules for tonight, and also she'll be introducing our panel.
Evening, everyone. My name is Melonie Welchans, and I ask, if possible, everyone to please mute themselves. I would like to go over the rules for the evening. We are trying to encourage everyone to have both an open and relaxed exchange. I ask that the panel please limit your responses to 3 minutes to any questions and comments. And for all those that have general questions and general comments, they can either be asked via the chat, or you can just unmute yourself and simply ask your question. But please limit your question, your general question or comment to 1 to 2 minutes. With that being said, I would like to introduce our panel for the evening. We have Sergeant Tim Grafton, Detective Matt Lewis, and Communications Relations Officer Martin Dunn. I would like to start the evening off with the question asking, what is the Shaker Heights Police Department doing to both ensure and inform its residents and its youth of their rights when they're interacting with the police? And whoever would like to answer.
I think I'll start off with that one. This is Sergeant Tim Grafton. Thank you for that question. Generally, what we attempt to do, especially at a time we're involved in the middle of an interaction, particularly with our youth, whether we need to talk to them just for informational purposes or whether there's some sort of accusation or we're dealing with them connection with maybe an offense that was committed, is that we just look to explain as much as we can at the time of the interaction. It's important because they have a lot of questions, of course. It's very unnerving to be stopped by a police officer or, have a police officer give you commands, ask you to stop and come and talk to them. So we try and be as upfront, open and honest and transparent as we can at that time to explain to them exactly what's going on and what we need for them to do at that time. Sometimes, depending on the situation, we don't have a lot of time to do a lot of explaining. And even in those situations, we try and explain that as well and say, hey, we can, I can explain more when we get things sorted out or things calm down. But right now, this is what I need you to do. So, just to put it in a nutshell, we try and answer any questions we can for them at that time so that we gain that understanding with them, and which hopefully gains compliance as well. And then when the incident's over, if they have further questions, either that time or later or another day, we're absolutely available to answer those as well.
And at this time, we'll take any questions that anyone would like to ask. You can place it in the chat or you can just unmute yourself and ask a question.
Now, if you like to, instead of, presenting your question and unmuting, if you'd like to send us your question, we're happy to ask it. And, again, this is just a community having an open exchange. It's really such a good starting point to know what your actual rights are. Oftentimes something may look or appear as if it's extreme or even wrong. But, once we find out the backstory that, oh, wait, this is protocol. Oh, wait, they're supposed to ask for a student to do XYZ, or they're supposed to ask me to do this in this procedure, then it all makes sense. So if anyone would like to, oh yeah, go ahead.
I know this question was spoken about in our first meeting, but I'm hopefully I have some of my scholar parents that are online now. I found out some information which I truly had no knowledge, and I think Mr. Keller brought it up, that when speaking to our underage kids, that as the police department, you do have the right, if they're implicated in whatever it is, I guess you're investigating, that you do have the right to question them without a parent being present. And I guess I had always been led to believe prior to our last meeting that that was not proper, for lack of a better word. But maybe someone, for our parents that are listening.
And yes, you are absolutely correct, Mr. Hicks. And Chief Prosecutor Keller did address that in one of the previous settings. And you know, if in fact a juvenile is arrested, we do have a right to speak with them, to question them regarding that incident without the parent being present. A lot of times it's situational. A lot of times we find that the assistance of the parents usually helps us out.
I saw one case.
Can you still hear me?
Madam President, should we finish?
I'm sorry, I asked
Sorry, it
everyone
sounds
to
like-
mute themselves.
Yes.
Okay, we're back. Yeah, so yeah, we do have that ability to speak with them without a parent being present. But as I said, you know, what we found a lot of times as well is that, you know, sometimes notifying a parent and getting them there and explaining the situation to them actually gains an advantage for us in terms of getting the information we need. Generally, most of the parents are very understanding as to, you know, why we have to talk to the kids or what the situation may be once we explain it to them. And I have found personally that generally I've been able to get the parents on our side and say, hey, you know, my kid had nothing to do with it. We have no, you know, problem with them talking to you. We have no problem with the parents being there when we speak with them. There's nothing to hide. But yeah, we do have that right to talk to them without the parent being present.
Hi, my name is Reggie Williams, and I'm Tracy Williams' husband. She attends these meetings and everything. My my concern is that that our students and young people understand that they have the right not to answer questions. You know, they have the right. They only need to really provide their name, address, and, you know, certain information related to that. You know, their name, address, and date of birth, I think, or something like that. And because I'm concerned that they will, a lot of times they get stopped and they get scared. I've been stopped a lot. And even at my age, it's a stressful situation. Is there some way to perhaps with these kinds of gatherings involving students to let them know just what their rights are in encounters with the police?
Hi, Mr. Williams. I'm Detective Lewis. It's nice to be speaking with you. So if I can, at least from my perspective and as a function of my job to investigate matters when they need to be looked at, you know, a little more in depth. I agree with your point. And yes, they do have the right to not speak to us and things like that. But what I'm getting at is there are often times where things are a misunderstanding. A lot of the times things aren't what they appear to be on the surface, and it is very beneficial for not just juveniles but adults to speak to the policeman so that the truth comes out, and then we can help remedy the situation. So a lot gets lost in translation when those conversations aren't had. So from my experience, when we do get to have those conversations, it makes things that much more clearer. And things get resolved in the most appropriate way. So
I appreciate that. I agree. I mean, communication is always good. I just want to make sure that our young people just understand, you know, what their what they can do. That's important too. Absolutely.
in conversations with students, I often pass out, I don't know if you can see it clearly, a flyer that is entitled "What to Do When Stopped by the Police." And it has various scenarios that provides instructions on how to engage with the police when stopped. And it advises them of their specific rights. And I try to pass that out whenever possible. I try to put that in the conversation when we give our presentations to students.
That's wonderful. Yeah, I think the ACLU does a little something like that too. That might be the one you have, but that's that's a wonderful thing. It really is.
And Mr. Williams, if I may add, and that was a wonderful question, because that subject is very important. It's important enough for us to have this forum. It's important enough for Community Relations Officer Dunn to pass that information out on occasion. But I think what would do us all well, and our kids as well, is for us to find a way maybe to get this information out in mass. So maybe we'll look into some ways to promote this information, maybe through our social media pages. And depending on what format Marty has it in, if it's simply flyers, that's information we can pass out in areas where our juvenile congregate. So thank you, and we will look forward we'll push that through.
Thank you.
If I may add, Mr. Williams, I'm Jeff DeMuth, I'm the Chief of Police. I'm wondering, and this is a legitimate question because I don't know the answer to this, and maybe Mr. Hicks, you wanna, or Mr. McIntyre, you jump in here. Is there a way that could be done in the school setting? I mean, it's kind of an unusual, but in an instructional manner to say, listen, as a part of this class, whatever it may be, a civics class or whatever, so we could, cover all students, is like, listen, when in interactions with the police department, these are the rights that you have as a citizen of the United States, whether you're juvenile or adult. And it's an honest question because I don't know the answer to that.
I'd like to respond to that just for a moment, please. Teaching at the high school for 30 plus years, I'm the advisor, one of the advisors for the MAC Scholars. And for a number of years, we've had Officer Dunn, a number of officers that would come in either to the classroom and speak to students in my health class, or attend our MAC Scholar sessions where we would have 50 to 90 ninth graders attending those sessions. Officer GRAFTON actually did a seminar or panel discussion at the middle school a few years back as well. The thing I found to be really most effective in those sessions, besides the Q&A formats, is that we would set up role play scenarios. Students in a car, maybe more than one student in a car, students basically deciding even amongst themselves to, in the role play scenario, giving instructions that might be counterproductive in that light of that situation. As we find oftentimes when students are in groups in settings such as that, there might be one student that has a little more information pertaining to the rights, but generally, if there are 4 kids in a car, everyone will not know what their rights are. And so peer pressure can become an issue in that split moment, in that second. But having those sessions where you're actually interacting with a large group of students, whether it be 9th graders, 10th graders, et cetera, and then sharing with them the importance of sharing that information with someone else and passing it on from that standpoint. But whether it be in an auditorium or a classroom, we've actually done both.
I have a question. My name is Nate Reese. My apologies, Mr. Hicks, for cutting you off. I'm a District MAC Scholars Coordinator. And I was wondering if you all have a video or some sort of information, an informational that you could either send to the district administration or individual principals of buildings that can be distributed to students throughout the district. That might be another method for you all to use.
I was also going to add, as far as talking to Mr. Sergeant Griffin, that is probably one of the things I sent in that I would like for you to speak to our kids about. You know, I've had conversations with them about how they should act or interact. And I think when Officer Dunn was at our building, I think it was last year, maybe the year before, kind of touched on it briefly, but he was there for a different subject matter. But that is actually what our topic, which on the 25th is how to interact. You know, a lot of our kids, especially that are younger and some of our older kids, they are spontaneous in their movements. Their actions, they start, I think I brought this up before, they initially start moving and shifting and moving, turning their back and things. And I told them how this is probably not the appropriate body language when you're talking to the police, because they don't know. And we're living in a world today where they don't know. So we are having that conversation about how our kids should interact, but hopefully when Sergeant Grafton comes to our building on the 25th, he'll be able to discuss it a little bit more.
I have a question from the chat. I'm sorry, they would like to know, how would they possibly gain access to that document that you had for Mr. Dunn? They want to know, can they pick it up, or how do they get access to it currently?
Yeah, they can make arrangements with me, either by calling the station. You can call my line directly, and that's 216-491-2525. Kind of easy to remember. And make a request. Hey, I can print up a number of flyers and make them available to whomever.
Okay, Marty, give him your email address too.
Okay, and that's easy. Martin.Dunn@shakeronline.com. And I will put that in the chat for everybody.
Thank you. Is it possible to have, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, Mel, go ahead.
I had another question. Is it possible for either Detective Lewis or Mr. Grafton to go over with parents what they can do to try to reduce the anxiety that the youth feels when they get pulled over, or maybe when they're being asked questions by the police? Because I think a lot of that has to do with they're scared.
Sure. So it's that anxiety is a normal reaction. It's going to happen. Yeah, the material that Officer Dunn referenced is great material, but it's hard for people to remember information and then recall it under stress. What I'd say is, if you're trying to talk to your child about being nervous about talking to police, they need to be comfortable in themselves and understand, you know, you've done nothing wrong, and we're not, you know, we work very hard to constantly pay attention to how we communicate with people. Communication is key. We are just as critical of our own abilities, and we're just aware of how much stress that we induce on people by our attitude and our body language. So understand that, you know, you teach children at age, or in kindergarten, don't talk to strangers, but that's a function of our job. So those are hard interactions, but I would just say to remind your children, look, if you've done something wrong, just be accountable for it. If you haven't, relax and take comfort in the fact that, you know, trust knowing that you've done nothing wrong. And at least here in Shaker Heights, I mean, our officers are very, I say it's an honor to work here, because I work with some great people that are really students of the game and really work hard to reach the highest level of professionalism. So we're working very hard to not give you that anxiety. And I think on those individual interactions, those anxieties go away when you interact with us, because you realize that everything's going to be okay. So That's what I would say on it.
I have another question from the chat. It states, when interactions go wrong with kids, is there any type of follow-up protocol with the youth or the family?
I'm not sure what we necessarily mean by an interaction going wrong. That to me, I mean, that would take my mind down so many different roads. I'll just stop with saying, well, maybe the juvenile wasn't satisfied or disappointed after the stop, that maybe they weren't treated fairly or maybe as nice as they thought they should have been. That's as far as I'll take the going wrong. But you always have recourse. And I can speak for our agency. And we're very welcoming of any criticism that we may have, or if someone feels they were not treated fairly by an officer or treated in a fashion that they felt they deserved, they have all rights to come into the station to talk to someone, either talk to a patrol supervisor, or in extreme cases, you have a right to file a complaint against a police officer and state your claim. And those issues are taken very, very seriously in our agency, and it gets looked over. We have body cameras where we review the incidents. So there's really nothing to hide. And if in fact someone feels that they were not treated in the fashion that they should have been treated in our agency, those are the recourses that they have. You know, when we're dealing with our kids, our officers are very aware that we are dealing with young people, and they will sometimes react in ways that we wouldn't choose them to do so, but it's up to us also as adults to recognize that. And this kid is not, you know, trying to be non-compliant, or he's probably nervous. So, you know, what we ask our officers to do as well is to be a little smarter and you know, do the things to de-escalate the situation, to let the young people understand why we're doing what we're doing or why we're asking what we're asking. And if you explain that in a respectful, proper way, generally you get their compliance. But if it just doesn't go well at the end of the day and they feel that they were wronged in some way, those are some of the options that they have that we can discuss the matter.
Okay, I have another question from the chat. It states, what training do the officers have in interacting with children? It says officers aren't always polite or concise or correct. So what is the officer's accountability in interactions with children and young people?
So I would say there's not a specific training that's simply geared toward interaction with juveniles. Our training involves interacting with all persons. You know, anyone you may come up against, or anyone that you may have to deal with in a helpful situation or not so helpful situation. So it's nothing that's geared specifically toward juveniles. We feel that you treat all people with respect, and you know, when you deal with them, and that generally gets us to the best conclusion.
And I would just
Okay.
add, I was just going to add, Melonie, in regards to the accountability question. It's the same whether it's adult or juvenile. Our officers have to be accountable for their behavior in their professional interactions with members of the community, whether or not they're juvenile or whether or not they're adults. And if we are not professional in our behavior with a juvenile in a certain instance, we will look into that, and we have, and we will continue to do that, and we'll look into that, and those officers will be held accountable for those lack of or less than professional encounters. And so I guess I'm just trying to put the exclamation point behind that. Age is not important in the accountability arena for officers and their interactions with members of the community.
What's the possibility? I'm sorry.
Go ahead, sorry.
No,
Go
I'm cutting you off and you're leading the show. So go
Oh,
ahead.
it's okay. I can ask my question when you're done. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, great. I appreciate that. Officers, what is the possibility of the police department just setting aside some money from its budget to do periodic meetings to talk about rights. I mean, and inviting the kids or going to the schools. I mean, you know, quarterly or every couple of months or something like that, to make it to sort of more formalize it. It'd be a real public relations feather to, you know, you putting yourself out there like that. And I do want to just end by saying, you all, in my view, we've been living here a long time, you all just do great things as a police department. But what is the chance of that?
There's high probability in what you just spoke upon. You know, with COVID, it's kind of slowed us down. We had a lot of different plans that were in the works when we kind of got shut down, and some of them involve a lot of contact between ourselves and our kids, and primarily we like to use the schools as a conduit for that, because that's where we are able to get to our students en masse. So, you know, as we work our way through this pandemic and we have the ability to be in a room with a group of individuals, I'm sure that's going to kick back off again. But yeah, that's no problem at all for us to be able to set up things, you know, on any timely basis, quarterly, monthly, what have you. And generally, you know, we have our partners involved that help us with that.
Another question from the chat. What are the protocols for mental illness interactions or special needs individuals? Is there any special training for that?
So we do specialized training. The even starting in the academy, there's a great lengthy conversation and specialized training given to that area. I know here specifically we go above with our PTO training program. We exceed, you know, state standards. We continuously are continuing our education. You know, mental illness is one of those things that you know, is not to be criminalized. You know, therefore your tactics or your response, you know, is different. And I feel that our officers get a fair share of real world experience dealing with people in mental crisis, and but everything from roll call tabletop exercises to scenario-based training. I myself and another officer led a scenario-based training last week with one of our new hires, and that was a huge section of the training. So we give a lot of attention to that. It's a huge, you know, huge part of what we deal with, and we have to be sharp and proficient, especially in those encounters.
Melanie, can I add something?
Yes, go ahead.
Mr. Williams, and for everybody else on this chat tonight, and if word gets around, this is for more people. So, you know, I want to talk about what Mr. Williams was asking, and, you know, we are in the midst of a pandemic and COVID. So the question is, what if we put together like a video on YouTube in regards to what, you know, what we're talking about, the rights of juvenile individuals with their interactions with police officers, but kind of, you know, that, and then add to it also. And the reason I say add to it is maybe there's other things you'd like us to cover on that video. And if maybe you submit those ideas to Kim and Kim gets it to us, and maybe we can cover that. And that's one way to reach out and touch the kids without us giving them COVID or, you know, things like that. What do we think about that idea?
Sounds good.
Okay, I will tell you, in the police department, everybody's really camera shy, so I'm going to have to bend some arms to put them on camera. But we will certainly put that together. At the very least, it'll be the rights, you know, what we talked about today. But if there's other ideas, let's get them to Kim, and maybe we could add it to the video or come up with another video. I think the only logistical thing is, how do we advertise that other than, you know, we have a Facebook page and stuff. How do we get it out to the kids the most kids, the masses, so that they can, they know about it, I should say.
Right, and I think that's a wonderful idea. You know, they need to see, and I know we talked about this a lot with the STAY program, which is a program SAMS wanted to get off the ground that actually allows for the youth to see what scenarios look like. You know, role playing goes very far with kids for them to see, like, this is the wrong way to do it. And so, but again, with COVID, it really has just stopped everything. But I think that right there is the answer, to get the information to them online, and to actually do the work of creating that video or that material to share.
It is absolutely a great way to start. Videos aren't the same as human beings interacting face to face, and neither are phone calls. I mean, and neither are Zooms. But it's a great way to start. You know, ultimately, it's a wonderful thing it makes a real impression on a teenager to have a police officer telling her or him what face to face what their rights are and what their responsibilities are. I mean, because they go hand in hand. But that's a wonderful idea, and it's a great first step.
You know, Chief, Al Foster here, exactly what you said and what Attorney Williams just said is a good way to get the youth involved. And I see that one of the participants on this is Sharon Bell, who is the head of the MyCom students. And I'm quite sure she can get the word out to a lot of the students and get them involved and looking at a video. And I'm glad that someone at the last minute told me about this so that I could be on it, or I wouldn't have even known about it. That's all.
The next question that I have in the chat, it says, what kinds of things are being done to foster positive relationships with our youth in the community?
Well, for starters, forums such as this, you know, that we're more than happy and more than willing, and we love participating in them. Also partnering with, you know, some of our community groups, our community partners, such as S.A.M.S, such as MyCom. So we do everything we can, and of course our doors are always open for any questions. We have kids stop up to the station periodically, and they'll have questions for us, or they have a relationship that they've developed with an officer. So we are more than open to any ideas, any suggestions that anyone has. We work closely with the schools as well. And, you know, myself in the past, Officer Dunn, some of our detectives actually go in and speak with the classes as well. So any of those ideas work for us, and any new ideas that anyone would have, we're more than willing to listen.
We, before COVID, did a roundtable discussion with 3 high school students. And I know the goal was to continue that. Obviously COVID, has changed that, but I think in a video setting, we could start to pick that back up again. But from what those 3 students said, was what they would like is organic interactions with us, where it's not necessarily done as part of a city project or a school project, but just organic one-on-one time with us, where they get to know us and they understand why we're doing what we're doing, and so they can kind of understand why it is that we treat things the way that we do, or what our thinking is. And so I think if students are open to Zoom calls with us, I know we'd be receptive to joining them on that. I think a lot came out of that roundtable discussion.
Me personally, I have engaged probably a dozen students since COVID, one-on-one for questions that they had and their parents had. And it was a nice time to bond with individual students. And, you know, I always encourage them to tell their friends that if they have a question for a police officer, connect with me or someone in the engagement unit and, you know, talk about it. Because these are the times that we're transparent. You know, I mean, there's really not much to hide. I mean, nor do you want to hide anything in regards to telling people the truth about police work and how we're all human. Sometimes we have bad days too. And, you know, to get them to understand that we're not a bunch of robots out here performing a duty, and we disregard the rights of everybody, and we disregard your feelings. So that's what I think I try to convey during my conversation with students.
And if I can mention too, very quickly, Detective Lewis mentioned the roundtable that he had the privilege of participating in. And we had 3 officers on one side of the table and 3 students on the other side. And it was an open, clear, candid conversation about why certain things are done, what are the perceptions under certain situations. So the greatest part of that is that we actually took that video and we used that as part of our yearly training for every single police officer in the Shaker Heights Police Department. They had an opportunity to sit there and watch that video, and they got firsthand information from our students themselves as to what their concerns were and their questions as to why we do certain things. And that was very important because that educational component goes both ways. And us being the adults, our officers being the adults, they have to know what these kids are thinking, what our kids want to see from us and what they expect from us. So that conversation was very valuable in that regard, that it was a great educational component for our officers.
Okay, I'm trying to wrap my mind around a comment that was made, and I saw someone put it in the chat as well. And maybe I'm still trying to, as I said, wrap my mind around it. I know when you said when there's no specified training in dealing with youth or adults, it seem like there should be some kind of specified training when dealing with young people, because their mindset is different than when you're talking to an adult, say someone my age, compared to someone that's 13 or 14. I don't know. Maybe you can help me out with that.
So, Mr. Hicks, with respect to investigative matters, at least from my end, you know, I have an understanding that juveniles can be suggestive, and you have to. There is a difference between how you interview juveniles and how you interview adults, and typically for certain investigations, a social worker or a county, you know, a youth counselor, somebody does handle those types of specific things, but those specific interactions out on the street, something happens, a fight at the library where we are talking to kids, their parents aren't there, you know, you're not in trouble, but we need to know, you know, what happened. There is training, but everything is situationally. So I think maybe the answer was confusing, that there's no specific. It does depend on what type of interaction that we're talking about. And I don't know if that makes anything any clearer, but I mean, there is an understanding that talking to adults is way different than speaking to kids.
That makes a lot of sense. I'm speaking to something you brought up, the library. Is
Right.
there any kind of way we could make that a safer space for our kids? Now, I just thinking about Woodbury kids. It seems like the library is a zone where a lot of fights break out. I don't know about whether middle school or high school, if that's the same problem, but I know there's limited places that our kids hang out in Shaker. And that's a wonderful thing in some respects. But I know the library is a place, and a lot of altercations occur at the library.
I agree, and I think you know, Chief and Sergeant can speak to that a little more. But to tie this into a question that was asked earlier about what can parents, do to give their kids advice, especially young kids advice about talking to the police. With the roundtable with older high school kids, the students brought up, social contract theory and that responsibility that, our mission statement here, the first couple words are in partnership with the community, right? And that's something that we take very seriously. And we want the community to take seriously too. We work for you. We exist because you trust us to enforce the rules that you created. And I think, fights at the library and things like that, there's a bigger issue than just, a lack of police presence or, it's kids taking ownership and accountability of their actions. And I don't know, I mean, if they get to know us and we're there more, they don't want to, you have that bond, that relationship, that rapport, they don't want to disappoint us because they understand that we're there to keep the library safe. They're not going to be a part of that problem because we're friends and they don't want to make my job harder. So I think there's a couple solutions and things that can make that a better, better place. But yeah, kids, I was 15, 16 once too. I get it, but I think there's a lot of things that we can do to improve on that.
I have both a question and a comment in the chat box. It says, I know it was said that the goal is to treat everyone the same. However, teenagers are not adults. Emotionally and psychologically, they're at a different place. Also, I've seen officers speak aggressively and disrespectfully to teens, which can be quite triggering. What has been or is being done to ensure actual de-escalation or consideration?
Let me handle that question. So I'm sure that's true. I'm sure that's been observed by residents where, you've seen officers talking aggressively or condescending or whatever negative connotation you want to attach to an interaction that you viewed between an officer and a juvenile. And I think a couple things that need to be said about that. Number one is it kind of goes with what Marty was talking about. And people ask me, what do you want the community to do for you? And is that, yeah, we're human. We make mistakes. We lose our temper. And sometimes when, a juvenile is giving us a hard time, that will rankle us and rub us the wrong way. So I think everybody knows that. I think everybody understands that. I think there's no denying that. The second part of the question is what are we doing? Every year we go through training and some sort of training in regards to bias-free policing, cultural competence, effective communication. Obviously, we try to mix it up and make it interesting in some topics that sometimes aren't interesting. But and it's been said, and I think Tim said, is yeah, we work very hard at trying to improve our competencies in communications with all groups of people. Are there going to be slip-ups? Absolutely. Are there going to be you're going to see times when officers lose their cool? Absolutely. That's going to happen because we're human too. But suffice it to say that we spend a lot of time training our officer in de-escalation techniques, in proper communication, and all sorts of things along those lines. So it's not like we are standing pat or not trying to improve those areas of our officers' interactions.
Also, the chief didn't mention a very valuable document that he made mandatory for all the police officers to review and sign off on. And it's that duty to intervene. So if we run into a situation and if you feel that, say, a fellow officer is losing control, we have a duty to intervene and kind of slow that officer down and try to de-escalate the situation in a proper manner.
So I just wanted to chime in and let everybody know we have about 10 minutes left to our conversation. So if you do have that question or that comment that you'd like to get in, we just encourage you to do it now. Mel, I think, do you have any more chat questions or questions coming up?
Yes, so the next question was, is it possible to utilize common ground as a training protocol for officers?
Are you asking to use this as the recording to, like in a training setting to give to other
Yes,
officers?
that was a question in the chat. Is it possible to use the our conversations that we're having within the Finding Common Ground as training protocol with the officers?
I mean, absolutely. Anytime you have dialogue and conversations with people, you know, you come closer together. Not every conversation is perfect, but you can learn a lot, you know, about people that, you know, you have to put yourselves in others' shoes. So I mean, absolutely, any conversation is fantastic.
And is it possible for these conversations to be available to the community in any way? I know that we're going to set up a video for the youth, but the question is, can they also be utilized for community-wide?
Melonie, I would say yes. I just don't know how to do that. I'm not really good with technology. I apologize for that, but there's no secrets here. You know, Marty said it earlier, we're very transparent. If there's a technological way we can do that, absolutely. I think it's a good thing. And Melonie, I just want to, on your previous question, and I know people have heard this from me, and I know I see Councilperson Williams is on this this meeting tonight, and I think she's going to cringe when I say this, because I'm always saying this, is that that's where I really want to go with all this. I want, if it's possible, could we get 7, 8, 10 members of the youth community on something like this, and then I can get 4 or 5 officers on something like this, where they can just sit together and talk, and where the youth can pretty much say, listen, I have a problem with the way this is done, or I have a problem with the way officers do this, or I have a problem where these kids, and I know they might be scared and intimidated, and that's that hill we have to get over. But Matt talked about it when we had the 3 officers and the 3 kids. Those officers that were on that panel got so much out of that interaction with those 3 kids, and Matt was one of them. And that's why I keep harping on this type of format, because that's what's going to build trust. It's going to build relationships. And our officers are going to learn from those children in telling us about their experiences.
Hi, my name is Tracy Williams, and I'm co-advisor of the Max Sister Scholars Program at the high school. And so I have a question. The superintendent of the schools has a student advisory group. Are you open to having a student advisory group, a group of students that you would meet with, or you and Detective Grafton, Officer Dunn, like a group of students that you would, you know, agree to meet with once a month, every 6 weeks, and hear what the young people are thinking about? I mean, Dr. Glassner does this with a group of students at the high school about once a month or so, and it's really been a positive experience for the young people and for the superintendent.
Timmy, I'm sorry, let me just jump in.
Yeah, go ahead.
Ms. Williams, I love that idea. And I mean, I love that idea with a group of how many students? Either we'll come to meet with them, or they can come to the police department, obviously with their mask on now, but that they can sit and talk with us. I love that idea. We tried that, Timmy, 3 years ago with the PASS program, and it never materialized, because and I apologize, I'm not even supposed to be a panelist, so I need to shut my mouth here. But I love that idea. That is a phenomenal, and every officer on here loves that idea, because really the people on this love to be and talk with the youth. I apologize. I need to shut up.
That's all right, Chief. Ms. Williams, my short answer was yes. My long answer was absolutely yes. Okay. So what I would like the privilege of being able to have that conversation with you. And I would ask that you contact me directly at the police department, and let's get the ball rolling.
Will do. Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next question in the chat, I'm sorry, it says, what does the police have to offer the community in regards to navigating the stand your ground law?
Are you referring to the new law that was just passed, or the changes in the law that were just passed a week or so ago?
I'm assuming, I'm sorry, it's a chat question, so.
Well, we don't have any specific training available. Of course, once the law was changed, there's, I'm sure, a ton of information, probably through the state website or even the Attorney General's office. But if someone had specific questions about it, we would simply ask, call in and let's discuss exactly what your question is. And we could probably just simply go over that and read it for what it is and make the determinations and get the answers that they specifically need.
And Chief, I'm not sure if you saw in the chat, but Carmela said she's on another call. She's not cringing at your comment, and that she likes all formats where people are engaging with each other. Finding constructive and positive ways to connect and know each other is what we all want.
I'm sorry, poor Councilperson Williams, she's going to get sick of me, and that's what I mean, because that's what I'm saying. Like, we just want to interact with the youth, and find ways to do that is important to us, because at least the 4 people on here, and I know there's other officers, the youth is extremely important to them. It is extremely important to them, and it's the way of our future, and we need to connect and build those relationships.
May I make a comment, please? Sharon Bell, Shaker MyCom coordinator, 12 years. I'll have 13 youth at the middle school on Monday for Martin Luther King Day, assisting the PTO with the donations drive. It would help if perhaps let's start small. Can we get some of the officers that we see patrolling rather than the officers that we know so well, DeMuth, Grafton, Marty, okay, to just maybe come and say, hello, thanks for volunteering, good job. We can start small then. I have had an opportunity a couple of years ago to have officers come to my youth council meeting where they got to sit down informally, just talk with a room of 12 middle school and high school seniors. That unfortunately did not continue, but it was a very worthwhile conversation. I think we need to get those officers that are on the street that we don't know to start doing and interacting and engaging with our young people. I'm happy to help in any way, and thank you for inviting me tonight.
Absolutely. Ms. Bell, I'm sorry. Ms. Bell, if you can give me that time, date, and location again. I know it was Monday. What is the location and what are the times?
Middle school we'll be there from probably 10:30 until 12:30, along with SCORE, taking the drive-by donations. I just capped off at 13 youth. Many of them are 15 years old, so they're just coming out of middle school. I'm going to be grooming them for MyCom Youth Council. We'll be there with SCORE, taking the donations, helping to sort, and the donations will be going to 3 designated homeless shelters. I've been working with the PTO for the last 3 months on MLK Day.
Wonderful. What we will do between Marty and myself is we're going to put a request in to the shift boss who will be running the patrol shift on Monday. And of course, pending whatever calls for service we have, we're going to make sure we put in a request to have any officers in that area stop in so they can spend a few minutes to assist with your group.
Yeah, Tim, it doesn't have to take long. Sometimes just walking by and say, boy, you're doing a good job. Thank you for volunteering.
Absolutely.
Means a lot. And it changes the view that youth have of the police.
Absolutely. Thank you for letting us know about that.
The last question that I have in the chat for the night is a question regarding policing and dealing with those who have special needs, especially youth with special needs. Is there any specified training for that or any protocols that the department goes over to deal with that?
So we make every effort to educate our officers on any special population that we may deal with, even to the point where we recently have created what's called the Family Safety Questionnaire, and it's on the city's website on shakeronline.com. And that form was built to give us a little advance notice, some information that can be helpful for us when we're responding to calls for individuals in our community who may suffer difficulties, either developmental difficulties, mental capacity difficulties, things of that sort. And we do that for a couple different reasons. The primary reason is the safety of all involved. For instance, we may deal with someone with autism that may walk away from their home and that sort of thing. So what families are able to do is go on the website and fill out a form. And it has a lot of questions that will help us in a case where we may get a call to that resident. And that way our dispatch center has this information at their fingertips. We have some people that respond negatively to the presence of police. Well, that's great information for us to know if at any time we have to respond to their homes. So we can, potentially slow down and take things another way, or at least we have that advanced information. So it's a tool that we use just to provide greater safety to the community and for the people that we're responding to help. So we do things like that to kind of give us all a leg up to ensure that nothing bad happens. So yeah, we just try and stay, try and keep ourselves educated.
And that's great. It's great that you have prior notice. I'm wondering if your training includes a specific component relating to encountering individuals with psychological differences.
As a matter of fact, Mr. Williams, last year and the year before, I would have to research the exact title of the topic. Every one of our officers went through or specialized training in regards to responding to calls for service with children with special needs and autism and things along those lines.
I appreciate that. That's very important.
So, Mr. Williams, if I can add, as far as a general training comment that gets made, whether it's, anyways, on a number of different subjects, situations dictate tactics, and I don't mean tactics meaning, equipment and trucks and all, not that way of tactics, but your positioning, whether it's your positioning in a conversation, your positioning and trying to resolve a conflict and to compromise. Any officer that is a student of the game realizes that it's going to be much more difficult for you if you're not sympathetic to some of those indicators or those warning signs or those things that let you know that this person is not viewing things from the same filter that somebody who's not mentally ill. Am I making kind of sense with that, where you can realize it's advantageous of me to make this choice or to say these things in order to resolve a conflict? You're making things way harder on yourself if you choose not to be a student of that game. So officers, on their own, do continuing education to better themselves. But yeah, there's standardized training, but we are students of the game, and it is your craft to perfect at the end of the day. So we trust the honor student or just the student in a classroom. When a student is giving a teacher a hard time, we trust those students in the classroom to speak up, and they draw the line as to what's right and what's fair. You don't have to call a policeman in to remedy a situation in the classroom. That's the leaders, those student leaders in that classroom to put their foot down on what's right and what's wrong. So you trust us to be that sharp, in our job to be professionals. So
I appreciate that, and I do hope that it extends to gender-based sensitivity training also, because that's important too. That's for sure. But I appreciate everything you've been sharing and everything that you all do. We all do. Absolutely.
Yes, and so I just wanted to come in and say thank you to the Shaker Heights Police Department for just being open to these type of conversations and discussions. It's my understanding that the police department, your priority is to provide safety to our community. That's your first job. And on top of that, you're taking time to work with groups like S.A.M.S. Shaker's rich with so many community groups that are doing good work. And you take the time to do activities like this. So you're really appreciated. And everyone on this call and everyone in the community is appreciated as well, because it's a two-part thing. It's just like any relationship, it takes work. And, tonight we are strengthening relationships, strengthening our lines of communication, and it matters. And that's how we're going to get there. MLK Day is coming up on the 19th. And I just want to quote him. And you don't have to see the whole staircase. You just have to take the first step. And I think that is the phase that we're in with a lot of this. And our foundation is so important. And again, that's going to get us where we need to be. So I thank everyone for your time on the call tonight. I think it was an excellent exchange. And I hope that you do join us again next month for our next conversation in the Finding Common Ground. I would like to be able to tell you the date in February right now, but I don't think I have that right in front of me. I'm thinking the second Thursday in February, but definitely I will share the information with scholars, advisors, and just continue to reach out in the community. And the information will also be on the S.A.M.S website as well.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
Yes,
Thanks
I'd
to
like
the
to thank
panel.
you guys
Stay
again.
safe, everybody.
Thank you.